Thank you so much for joining us for CBN NewsWatch. I'm Ephraim Graham. Ahead today, stopping the threat from Iran's nuclear program. That's a top priority in discussions between the U.S. senators and Israeli leaders. And the possibility of military strikes is also on the table. Israel also dealing with another potential threat, how to protect itself from terrorists in Gaza. New peace talks on Ukraine underway between the U.S. and Russia, but so far Ukraine itself is not involved. And a remarkable film shows how 21 Christian men were executed by ISIS 10 years ago and how faith, hope, and sacrifice is being honored. All those stories and more right now on CBN NewsWatch.
This is CBN NewsWatch.
We begin this Tuesday in the Middle East. While the world focuses on Hamas and the hostages in Gaza, a U.S. Senate delegation visiting Israel is warning that Iran poses a much greater threat to the world as it pushes ahead to develop nuclear bombs. That discussion coming as Israel is also trying to protect itself by preventing terrorists from controlling Gaza. CBN Middle East correspondent Julie Stahl brings us the story from Jerusalem.
Republican Senator Lindsey Graham said the Trump administration can try economic and diplomatic means to force Iran to abandon its nuclear goals, or the U.S. can end that threat permanently.
A military path where we help Israel deliver a decisive blow against Iran's nuclear infrastructure, I prefer that path.
Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar warned the U.S. lawmakers Iran's only way to maintain power in the region is to acquire nukes. He wrote on X, Iran seeks to compensate for its weakened position by obtaining nuclear weapons. It must be stopped. This first congressional delegation to visit Israel since President Trump took office showed tepid approval of his plan to empty Gaza and have the U.S. assume control. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu backs the Trump plan, but Graham says Palestinians shouldn't be forced to leave.
I will work with Israel to find countries that would host Palestinians if they choose to leave. But we're not talking about a forced exodus.
Israel believes many Gazans will want to get out as they see the utter decimation of their homes and neighborhoods.
Everything is destroyed. Nothing is left in Gaza. Gaza is not fit for life.
Netanyahu also says he won't accept the transfer of power in Gaza from Hamas to the Palestinian Authority. Many believe the PA shares the same goals as Hamas.
They only exist in order to kill us. And there's no difference between the Islamo-Nazis called Hamas and the Islamo-Nazis called Palestinian Authority.
The uneasy ceasefire with Hamas is holding, with the terror group set to hand over the bodies of 4 murdered hostages on Thursday. Reports are now saying Hamas may release the 6 remaining live hostages, due to be freed in Phase 1 of the deal this Saturday instead of over the next 2 weeks. Hostage relatives like Eli David are campaigning hard to make sure there's a Phase 2 when his brother would hopefully be freed from the horrors Hamas has inflicted on its captives for more than 500 days.
It's so long that these people, my brother included, are suffering. They have not enough food. They have no sunlight. They are kept underground, and they are being through torture.
In the north, Israeli troops are pulling out of southern Lebanon, as agreed to in the ceasefire deal. But Israel is planning to keep troops in 5 strategic outposts in Lebanon with U.S. approval. It's also tripling the number of troops on the Israeli side of that border. The IDF says if it looks like the ceasefire is holding, it hopes the tens of thousands of Israelis who evacuated the border area will come back starting March 2nd. Julie Stahl, CBN News, Jerusalem.
We continue our coverage right now with Chris Mitchell, who's joining us from Jerusalem. So, Chris, Senator Lindsey Graham says he prefers a military option to end Iran's nuclear ambitions permanently rather than diplomatic or economic options. What is the thinking of Israeli leadership?
Well, Ephraim, I think the thinking of the Israeli leadership, the bottom line is stop Iran. I believe they agree with Senator Lindsey Graham that the military option is really the best way to end Iran's nuclear ambitions. They have little or no trust in diplomacy. They remember what the JCPOA, that negotiated settlement with the nuclear deal between Iran and other nations, really has failed. Graham and the Israeli leadership, I think, in this particular object in terms of Iran are on the same page. When they said at that press conference that you saw in Julie's report, they were saying that Iran dominated the conversations with Israeli leaders. They met with the prime minister, the foreign minister, defense minister, and even the speaker of the Knesset. And all the topics, every meeting talked with Iran, and they want to make sure that Iran is taken care of. And as the foreign minister said, Iran really is weakened right now, and so they want to accelerate to a nuclear weapon.
Chris, would a military strike on Iran's nuclear program have to come sooner rather than later, possibly even this year?
It seems so, Ephraim. It seems likely for a number of factors. And as I said, Iran seems to be accelerating their nuclear program. They're more vulnerable than ever. Their air defenses have been degraded or destroyed in 2 separate attacks by Israel last year. Also, the Syrian air defenses, which was one sort of a level of protection for those nuclear sites in Syria, has been degraded or destroyed. So now we also see that the Trump administration is on the same page in many ways with Iran. You have Secretary of State Marco Rubio. You have National Security Advisor Mike Waltz, all wanting to make sure that Iran does not get a nuclear weapon. You also have the munitions available. Just the other day, Ephraim, there was a large shipment of bunker-busting bombs here to Israel. So this all represents a huge shift from the Biden administration, and it makes it possible, maybe likely, that there'll be a strike against Iran's nuclear program perhaps this year.
All right, let's turn to the fact that Israel will not accept either Hamas or the Palestinian Authority being in charge of Gaza. So who is likely to govern Gaza, and how can Israel protect itself from terrorism there?
Well, protecting itself, right now it seems like Hamas is does not have the capability it certainly had on October 7th with rockets or the capability to do any sort of cross-border attacks. But we'll see. And Israelis don't want to go back to these southern communities unless they are sure that Hamas is defeated totally militarily and also is not ruling in Gaza. In reference to that press conference last night, Lindsey Graham said actually in a post-Gaza, there will be, or a post-Hamas Gaza, Saudi Arabia would be the definitive player. President Trump says the U.S. is going to own Gaza, but Israel may maintain security control. Arab nations would maybe rebuild. And also, one of the things that was mentioned by Graham and others in that press conference, they want to de-radicalize the people of Gaza. And Graham compared it to post-World War II, when Nazi Germany and Imperial Japan was denazified and Japan was totally changed as well. He believes the Arabs would be the most appropriate culturally to do so. But also here in Israel, Israelis want some Israelis to settle in Gaza. So it's a real complicated question of what's going to happen after Hamas. And if you go back to the Bible, Ephraim, who owns Gaza? Well, many people say it was the tribe of Judah.
Egypt is putting forth a plan on Gaza to counter President Trump's idea. What does the Egyptian plan say, and how is Israel likely to respond to that?
Well, we'll see. It's all in flux right now. You have Marco Rubio that went down to Riyadh right after he was here in Jerusalem to see how this is all going to work out. The Egyptian plan envisions secure areas where Palestinians can live while the reconstruction goes on. Egypt doesn't want the Palestinians in Egypt. So it's running contrary to President Trump's plan. The Arab nations will be meeting this week and then presenting their own alternative plan at the end of the month.
Israel is pulling out of Lebanon, and Israelis in the north hope to return home. But has Hezbollah truly been disarmed?
Ephraim, it really doesn't seem to be. The IDF almost on a daily basis is finding arms in southern Lebanon. As Julie's report said, they're pulling out but staying in 5 strategic areas. So Hezbollah is still active. And actually, Lebanon is in turmoil right now. Hezbollah attacked a UNIFIL convoy the other day. They're opposing the Lebanese government in some way. So Lebanon is still in turmoil, and people should be praying for the people of Lebanon right now.
What can we look forward to this evening on Jerusalem Dateline?
Well, we're going to have latest updates, Ephraim. Analysis with Avi Abelo, Itamar Marcus from the Palestinian Media Watch, what the PA is really saying, and also a story about Kibbutz Dafna, about residents actually going back to their northern border community 500 days after October 7th.
All right, Chris Mitchell reporting from Jerusalem. Thank you so much. We appreciate you and your insights. We are looking forward to seeing and hearing more from you in the days ahead. I want to remind you at home, you can see Jerusalem Dateline this evening at 8 Eastern. You can find it on the CBN News channel. You can also find it on the CBN News app or watch on YouTube. Coming up, peace talks in Saudi Arabia between the United States and Russia about ending the war in Ukraine. But Ukraine itself is not involved in those discussions. We're going to have that story for you when we come back. Secretary of State Marco Rubio is leading crucial talks in Saudi Arabia between the United States and Russia in a bid to finally end the war in Ukraine after nearly 3 years. But Ukraine itself so far is being excluded from those discussions. Senior Washington correspondent Tara Mershner has this story.
It's a high-stakes meeting with potential global impact. For the first time since the war began, U.S. and Russian officials are sitting down face-to-face, hoping to find common ground and possibly a path to peace. U.S. and Russian officials meet in Saudi Arabia for their most extensive discussions in years. This as President Trump pushes to end the war in Ukraine, and both sides seek to warm up their frosty relationship.
I think the discussion today with the U.S. team are very important, and we've been consistently saying that good U.S.-Russia relations are very important for the whole world.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio, joined by top national security officials, aims to lay the groundwork for a future meeting between President Trump and Vladimir Putin. These talks follow a phone conversation last week lasting 90 minutes.
We're moving along. We're trying to get a peace with Russia, Ukraine, and we're working very hard on it. It's a war that should have never started.
Absent from the discussions are U.S. allies in Europe and Ukraine. Ukrainian President Zelensky is expected to visit Saudi Arabia tomorrow, but says he has not been invited to the talks. Zelensky's made it clear that Ukraine will not recognize any agreements made without its participation.
Maybe there is something at the table, but not on our table.
Zelensky also warning President Trump in a recent phone call that Putin cannot be trusted. The U.S.-Russia dialogue has sent shockwaves across Europe, prompting leaders to gather in Paris for an emergency summit to plan their response.
I think the most important thing about this meeting tonight is the need for all of us to step up when it comes to our spendings on defense. Russia is not only a threat against Ukraine, but all of us. So we need to scale up, and we need to speed up, and to do that we need also a discussion in the European Union about the fiscal rules.
The Trump administration's decision to engage in these talks represents a significant shift in long-standing U.S. foreign policy, not only in Europe, but also in the Middle East. Yesterday, Rubio met with the Saudi Crown Prince to promote President Trump's idea of a U.S.-controlled Gaza Strip. In Washington, I'm Tara Mergener, CBN News.
Still ahead, a special animated film pays tribute to 21 Christians executed by ISIS 10 years ago. We're going to bring you the story about what happened and this important film when we come back. 10 years ago, ISIS marched 21 Christian men out to their deaths on a beach in Libya, and the reports of their execution spread quickly around the world. Their story of faith, sacrifice, and eternal hope in the face of terror is now being memorialized in a new animated film. CBN's Chris Mitchell has this story.
February 2015. 21 men stood on the edge of eternity, on this beach, dressed in orange, hands bound. They were given one choice: deny their faith or die. They chose death.
We heard about it as soon as it happened, basically. Once the video was broadcast, it spread like wildfire. It was a declaration by the Islamic State to put fear in the hearts of the Coptic Church and the Coptic people, whom they considered their favorite prey.
While the world saw their deaths, their families felt the loss of fathers, brothers, and sons.
For the families, it was devastating. I don't think they even considered themselves martyrs. They just saw that their husbands had just been killed, their fathers had just been killed, their brothers had just been killed. And so the families mourned greatly.
They were simple men, 20 Egyptians and 1 man from Ghana, working in Libya to support their families, then captured by ISIS.
I think for many people, we remember the images, at least the orange jumpsuits, where the 21 were beheaded, and we know that they did not recant their faith. What we don't know is that that came only after weeks, if not even months, of torture and other efforts to get those 21 to recant to their faith.
6 years ago, on a trip to Egypt, Mark Rogers learned about the 21 and decided to tell their story.
In the early 21st century, ISIS began a reign of terror in attempts to cleanse North Africa of Christians. One of their favorite prey? Egyptian Coptic Christians.
Bringing it to the screen proved to be a labor of faith and perseverance. The result is The 21, an animated film. Unlike traditional documentaries, the film uses sacred Coptic imagery, turning the martyrs' final moments into a visual prayer of faith. The producers chose traditional animation because of its unique ability to make challenging subjects approachable and use artwork central to the Coptic faith.
It's very tastefully done. It makes it very, very interesting when these ISIS terrorists occasionally think they see Jesus or see angels. There's like spiritual warfare crackling in both directions. How would you depict that in a documentary? You can't. So there's something very, very moving. I'm still trying to catch my breath because I was crying at the end.
Jonathan Rumi, who plays Jesus on The Chosen, is an executive producer.
I think I want people to be more aware of the sacrifices that so many Christians give, especially in other parts of the world. Martyrdom is not something that is common in the Western world, but in the Middle East and the Orient, there are legitimate physical threats to people on a daily basis.
They caught one guard, and he was the one that explained all the details of what happened to the men, how they were tortured, how they were caught, how they rehearsed the video 2 times before. They marched them on the beach. They had the cameras rolling, and they prepared their filming, and then the 3rd time was when they were beheaded.
Tortures included being sprayed with cold water, not letting them sleep in the cold of winter. It included having them drag wet sand through the desert until they collapsed. It included burning them with irons, emotional torture, isolation, so all kinds of different tortures, physical and emotional.
As head of Coptic Orphans, Riyadh and her ministry were already working in the village of the 21.
And so now that there are new fatherless children, we were able to embrace them and enroll them into our programs so that we could walk with them the journey of healing, the journey of support, both financial and emotional support.
She now knows them as family.
They are resilient. You know, you would think that they were traumatized and still will be traumatized, but yet they have a peace, they have a joy that, in all honesty, contagious when you see how much they know that Christ is with them, that Christ is the one who is giving them that peace. And they are thankful. I was sitting in the middle of all the widows when they were seeing it for the very first time. And the comments of a mother almost reliving her sense with having lost her son, but at the same time she says, "You have made it so we can lift our heads high."
It was a very impactful film, but God gave us comfort, and we know that they testified to Christ, and God gave them a lot of strength as well. You have to remember these are young men, and they're not very well off, but look how strong their faith was. They didn't know how they were going to get back to Egypt. They didn't know anything in front of them, but all they knew was that God was with them.
I felt tearful, and it really impacted me. But nevertheless, it was very beautiful.
Do you forgive the men of ISIS?
Yes, of course, because they're the reason that these martyrs went to heaven in the first place.
The film poses a question that I think is worthy to each and every one of us that are followers of Christ. How would we respond to that call? What would we do in their shoes? Could we be as faithful? And, you know, I find myself challenged by the question, and I pray the answer is yes, and in my heart it's yes. And I pray, you know, I will go to my grave with the same confession of Jesus' name on my lips. But the question remains, like, could you do it? Would you do it? Yeah. What if you were them?
Oh, I would love to see every single Christian around the world to watch this movie. It's inspirational, it gives us hope, and it shows us the power of faith in our Lord Jesus Christ. I'm praying that indeed it will spread like wildfire.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Minya, Egypt.
Now, if you'd like to watch the 21 for yourself, your family, home group, or Sunday school group, you can go to the21film.com and see it there, and you can share that website with others who want to see it as well. We're coming back with an encouraging word for your day ahead. Stay with us.
Introducing a brand new way to start your morning. Get your daily quick start from CBN News. A quick read on the important news of the day delivered right to your inbox. Stay current on breaking news, politics, and entertainment. Discover how God is moving around the world and here at home. Plus, get exclusive stories and daily scripture encouragement just for you. Stay informed. Go to quickstart.news and subscribe today.
Time now for your Tuesday Tweetable. Here's a message to post, tag, tweet, and share with those in your circles of influence. Life circumstances, troubles, and trials are not failures. They're a blessing or a lesson. Give thanks in both cases. As the scripture tells us, God will cause all things to work together for your good. I'll add to that, it's also for His glory. With that word, make this a terrific Tuesday. That will do it for this edition of CBN NewsWatch. You can always find more of our news programs on the CBN News channel. You can find them there at any time as well as online. That address is cbnnews.com. Take a moment, let us know what you think about the stories you've seen here today. You can email us, newswatch@cbn.com. You can also reach out and touch us on Facebook, Instagram, and X, formerly known as Twitter. Hope you'll join us again right back here, same time tomorrow. Thank you so much for watching. Goodbye. God bless.